Welcome, everybody. Sincere thanks to those of you who give the videos the thumbs up and to those who leave the comments underneath. Deeply appreciated. And I remember your intentions every morning in Mass. Do you know that it is possible to complete the first stage of the Camino de Santiago de Compostela pilgrimage here in Ireland? And one of the possible stages is from Hollywood near Blessington over to God's Cottage along the St. Kevin's Way. My assistant Imelda Prendergast recently did just that and then went on to complete the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela in Spain. Last Sunday, I invited her to share with our group her experience of the pilgrimage.
I had some beautiful experiences on the recent Camino. But if I just firstly mention how I came to be there. I spent about 3 weeks on the Camino about 15 years ago. And I did the main route over France, and I didn't do it all, but parts of it, over to Santiago. And I enjoyed it, primarily, I think, for the walk and for the exercise. And it was a very busy route. You meet a lot of people, and there's a lot of talk, a lot of chatter. So I don't think I really got a very spiritual experience. And we arrived in Santiago for one night, and I didn't engage too much with it. But in any case, that was 15 years ago. I never felt inclined to go back at all, until I heard about the Celtic. I think actually it was Ellie mentioned, or Peggy mentioned, the Celtic Camino, which is it's kind of a new, it's not a new route, but it's a short route from A Coruña down to Santiago, and you have to do 100 kilometres on the Camino. Because that's less than 100, you have to do at least 25 kilometres on a pilgrim route in either Ireland or England. So we got the little passports and the Celtic Camino certificate, and we got the stamp here in God's Cottage. So I just said to my sister, look, we'll be go and do St. Kevin's Way. That's all I wanted to do. Not all I wanted, but that's what I was just thinking. So we did the St. Kevin's Way last year, and we got our Celtic Camino. These are in God's Cottage. We got our Celtic Camino certificate for the St. Kevin's Way that started in Hollywood. I'll just put that in front of the video. I'll take the videos on. So when we had done that, my sister said to me, now we have to go to Santiago to finish it. And I thought, fine, I was more than happy to spend a week or so with my sister. That's what I was thinking. So in any case, we were in Santiago we were in Spain for 10 days. And I had a totally different experience this time, many beautiful experiences. Santiago, the name itself, is actually the Spanish name for St. James. I didn't know that, but it derives from the Hebrew name for Jacob, which is James. And in Santiago, every time the feast of St. James falls on a Sunday, they have a Jacobean year. It's a holy year. And 2021, the feast of St. James fell on a Sunday. But because of the pandemic, the Pope and the bishop authorities agreed to extend the Holy Year to December 2022. So I did not know that before I went there. And it was quite a special thing. Because, as I say, it doesn't happen very often. And when you visit Santiago on a holy year, you get a plenary indulgence that was granted by the Pope back in the 13th century. So there are certain conditions for that. I won't go through them all, but one condition is that you have to enter the cathedral through the holy door. There's many, that's the huge cathedral, there's many ways in, but you have to enter through the holy door. And so we did that, and my sister was really taken with this holy door and entering through the holy door, because we had 3 different, we arrived in Santiago for 2 nights, and then we went up to A Coruña, and then we walked back to Santiago, and then the next day we went out to the coast to Finisterre, and then we came back to Santiago. And we were all both of us were really taken by the tomb of St. James. But to get to it, my sister always had to go in through the holy door. Well, that was fine, that was beautiful. And it's, just when I read up about it, it's the symbolic entrance way that represents the passage from sin to divine grace. So that's what, and the holy door is only open in the holy year. So, you don't get to enter through it very often. And Santiago was declared in the 15th century as one of the 3 great pilgrimages of Christendom, along with Jerusalem and Rome. So it is a beautiful place to visit. And the cathedral is beautiful. The construction on that started in the 11th century. So we went to the tomb, we went into the Holy Door, and we went down to the tomb of St. James, which is under the altar. So you walk down a little narrow, and then the tomb is here, and you stop and pray at the tomb, and then you exit out. And the first time I went down, I just had a beautiful presence of God's presence, and I just had the sense that, here lies a man who walked with Jesus, St. James the Great, and perhaps he was Jesus' first cousin, and he sat and had meals, and he walked. Now, as soon as I thought that, and each time I went to the tomb, I thought that, but straight away I also thought, we walk with Jesus all the time because he's with us. So he's no different. Like he's with us, he's within us. We talk to him and we eat with him. But it just really struck me, the whole holiness, just the sense I felt when I was there. So anyway, we headed off up to Acaruna to walk back, and just a few little things that touched me along the way that was really nice. Firstly, it was the hospitality that we received, and they really do make it as affordable as they possibly can for people to be on pilgrimage there. Like the albergs, are cheap. You'll get a twin or a double room or a single room maybe for 30. Maybe even like €40 for two. Like, it's quite affordable, and you get a pilgrim meal, the menu del dia, for €9, 3-course meal. That's good. And you meet super people along the way, and they're really concerned for you, and you travel really lightly, so you have that kind of sense of self-sufficiency, knowing that the Lord will provide. And like, we were heading out in the morning, and they were saying, but don't you need your coat? Do you need a fleece? And we were in t-shirts because it was really warm, and they were wearing like autumn clothing. So that was really nice. And we had some lovely encounters with people where I have tiny bit of Spanish, but we had great communications. I think on the second day, it was really quiet, and we were walking along the road. We hadn't seen any other pilgrims, and there was this man. Obviously, we didn't see him. He was hiding behind the bushes in his garden, and he let a roar. It's almost like he waits for pilgrims. He let a roar, and we just jumped out of our skin, thinking, where is this coming from? And anyway, this little man came to his gate, and he was very elderly, and he got a great laugh out of this, and he'd no teeth in his mouth, and he was talking, and telling us all sorts. And so we were loving the encounter, even though we didn't quite understand. But as we walked on that day and we saw, the sights and the things that we came across, we realised that he was telling us what we were going to see. And I thought, well, look, we got a lot out of it. And it made me think, don't be so quick to see barriers and break down barriers and communicate with people. And even if you don't understand every word, you can enjoy the experience. And then I would say, possibly the main reason why this trip was more spiritual than the last trip, it was very, very quiet. And this is one reason why I would recommend the Celtic Camino. So we started in Acaruna, and we walked down. And for the first 2 days, there was nobody else on the route. And there's another route that comes from the north. And on the town that it joins, you'd normally hit that town roughly on your second day. And then from there on in, there are other pilgrims. But even at that, there were probably only 15 other people. Whereas, as I said, on the last pilgrimage I did, it was like a thoroughfare. There were so many people, and they all talked to you. So it was lovely to see other pilgrims, but not necessarily to talk with them, because we didn't really want that. But it was just a great sense of unity and being united with these group of people and of sharing a journey. Also, I got a sense that there was a great respect among the pilgrims not to interrupt. And they have this lovely expression that you always say when you meet somebody on the Camino, bon Camino. So you're wishing them a good Camino. So that was really beautiful. And that's all we would say, like, is bon Camino to it. And they would say that to us. But as we got closer to Santiago, I noticed, well, firstly, just to say in Santiago, or in Spain, there's about 8 routes into Santiago, a couple up from Portugal, a few up from Spain, across the north, and then across from France, and then down. And the city itself is very small. There's only like 100,000 people, less than 100,000 people living there. And you see the 2 towers of the cathedral, and the planning laws don't allow any other buildings to be built higher than the towers. So you know where you're going. And there's probably this year, close on 1,000 people a day walking into Santiago from all the different routes when you combine them all. And what I noticed on our route coming in, we all come in from different directions, and then the closer you get, you see others. People are very quiet. And if they were previously walking in ones or twos, they're now walking on their own. And they have that sense of coming to the end of the journey. And you just can't help wondering, well, how come we're on this journey? How come we're here? And how has God touched us? And then you see others and you wonder, well, how has God touched them? Because you can be sure God has touched them in some way. So what I really liked at the very, very beginning was you start at a beautiful Santa Maria church in A Coruña. So when you're there, you have to find the sign. You have to find the directional sign. And it's a yellow arrow and a yellow shell, and it's either a tile on the wall or on the ground, or a post with a sign on it. So as you get on that sign, once you see the first arrow, you're on the way, and you're not going to move off it. You're just going to keep looking for the arrows. And then the other beautiful thing was in all the little villages and all the towns with a beautiful cross. Now you could possibly walk and not see it, but I think we saw all the crosses. A huge big cross, and sometimes they would have Jesus on the cross, and other times they would have Jesus on one side and our Blessed Mother and baby Jesus on the other side. So you're walking on this beautiful way, you're being guided by the cross, and you're not going to move from it. You're just going to stay in that direction, heading towards the cathedral. So when you arrive down in Santiago, the first thing I would say most people do is go to get our Compostela. So we went with our Camino, Celtic Camino. You have to take this with you as proof that you've done your 25 here. And then we get our Compostela from the cathedral in Santiago, and it has your name in Latin, and it just writes in your name, and it just confirms that you've done that. And it's queues to go in, it's very well organised, but it's in a separate building completely from the cathedral. And when you go to get your Compostela, in this very same building, like they have a railing, and this is all in to get your certificate. And in here, on the left-hand side, is a beautiful little Pilgrim Church. And very, very few people go into the Pilgrim Church. Well, I didn't see very many people going in, but we went into the Pilgrim Church, and it was a lovely place to kind of end, in some ways, to end a Camino, but you have to be aware it's not an ending, it's really a beginning. And they have lovely reflections on the screen, just for people to think about the way and the journey, and what are you going to take home, and how has God touched your heart, and where did you meet God on the journey, and how did you meet God on the journey. So just things that you can think about. And one thing, you do get that sense when you're walking in that you're coming to the end. But like I say, you have to remember that you've had these lovely encounters, but you'll take God with you when you go home, because everybody's coming home facing stuff, and God will be there. So that was very nice. Final Mass. They have Mass 4 times a day in the cathedral, so it was very easy to be there to get Mass every day. So we went to the final Mass, and final Mass for us because we were coming home the next day. And you have to get into the cathedral very early, maybe 20 minutes beforehand to get a seat. And I was watching everybody, and it's always packed, it's always really busy. And you can't have thinking everyone is here, and how many Caminos have they done, and how come they're here, and when did the Lord touch them? And I just got this sense that there's going to be a great renewal in the church. People are going to come back to the church, but it may not always happen within the physical structure of the church building. And it just gave me great encouragement for the work we're doing here, and for the pilgrimage that we're starting, that we've started this year, that people will come on the pilgrimage, and they might have to come quite a few times, but that they might encounter God. And particularly if we can create it in such a way that we are trying this now for the next one in a couple of weeks, that it will be silent, and that it will be quiet, and there will be time for people to encounter the Lord. And the other thing just to mention on that as well, I thought about inviting people. We're not so great at inviting people. The whole reason I went there last week was because I invited my sister on a pilgrim walk, and I had no intention of going. But the other thing, so it gave me great courage, because the whole pilgrimage in Santiago, it really got a big revival in the 1980s. There was probably less than 1,000 people a year going in the early 1980s, and then it grew and grew and grew, up to well over 300,000 now are expected this year in the whole year. But the other thing I noticed in the church, in the cathedral rather, a lot of people come in as tourists, and they stop and they look, and some people, they might go down to see the tomb, and they walk down the stairs and they walk up and out the other side, and they won't pause to look. And others will be on their knees leaving petitions. So everybody, connects with it differently. But when I saw the people coming in, particularly during Mass, you can see they're really interested. And some of them look and they leave, and some stay longer and they look and they look around and they look, and perhaps they have no idea what's happening on the altar, and perhaps there are people even at Mass who don't always understand what's happening on the altar, and they watch and then they walk out. And I just thought, they don't understand, and they are passing by the sacraments. When you come into the Holy Door, there's the sacrament of reconciliation, there's the adoration chapel, and some of those private chapels are empty, and you just think maybe people just don't know. And I thought, well, maybe we could do something here, maybe a program in the autumn, or to make people aware of the faith. And have days that would open people to however, we'd have to discuss how we would structure that, but to just teach people, answer their questions, and satisfy even if it is just their curiosity, satisfy their curiosity and let them know. I know there's wonderful stuff happening in parishes, and they do lovely catechetical instruction and things like that. But they were the two things that I kind of took away thinking, well, firstly, I had lovely little encounters, but thinking that maybe we might do something a little bit differently, develop the pilgrimage and keep working on it, and don't be discouraged by low numbers, and maybe look at some ways of making people more aware of their faith to come into an encounter. The other thing that's really important to say is this is such a beautiful year to go to Santiago, 2022. It's a beautiful year to visit Santiago, and you do not have to walk the walk. You don't have to walk the pilgrimage to get the benefits of those graces and the plenary indulgence, because obviously there are many people who can't do the walk, and you can just make them known, and you will still benefit from that. And despite everything, it's a fabulous city to go for a city break. Like it's beautiful, and it's very small, it's very manageable, and the tapas is good. It's a nice place to be, and they make it affordable. We arrived in the airport and jumped on a bus, €1 into the city centre for a half an hour bus journey, and €7 to get a train up to A Coruña to walk back. So I think they really try and make it very appealing for pilgrims to come. I think it's important to know, though, if you are thinking of going and some of your friends just aren't up for the walk for whatever reason, they can still come for the trip to Santiago. But can I just show you, symbol of the Camino is the shell. I'm sure you've all seen the shell. A lot of people will hang it on their rucksacks, or they'll take it home as a souvenir. It's a very ancient symbol of medieval pilgrimage. But of course in Santiago they say, there's many things, but they say, like if you see all the things on the shell, all pointing towards the cathedral, so all routes go into the Santiago Cathedral. And then of course in the older days they say they would have eaten from it and they would have drank from it. So it's a nice little souvenir to have. And then of course the Camino Passport. Any of you who've done the Camino Passport, the Camino will have the passport, but this is what it looks like. You get your passport and you start with the Camino Society of Ireland, and then the first walk we did is Hollywood, so we went to Hollywood Cafe, get your passport if you do the St. Kevin's Way, and then of course the nice red one, you will see that one, God's Cottage Prayer Centre in Glendalough. Followed by the Santa Maria stamp for the church in A Coruña, so that's next. And then you pick them up, you have to get 2 a day where you stay and where you go, and then it finishes then with the beautiful stamp from the cathedral in Santiago. And then just finally just to say, this book is fantastic. It's a guidebook to the Camino Anglais. It's written by John Brearley. It's available from the Camino Society of Ireland. I'm going to order some here for God's Cottage. And for anybody who wants to walk the St. Kevin's Way, you will get the passport, and you'll get your Compostela, the Celtic certificate in God's Cottage, and in a couple of weeks you'll be able to get the little guidebook as well. So hopefully somebody will go, and if anybody goes, I just wish you all a born Camino if you do decide to go to Santiago.
Thank you very much, Imelda.
Thank you.